Buongiorno. Welcome to the Latte Firm for a breakdown on Ricky Calafiori. And I am so delighted to have long-standing friend of the channel and guest, Nima Tavaloy Rutsari. Nima, how are you, my man?
It's so good to be with you, man. It's been a long time, and yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you again and to talk to you about a player who I really rate and I'm really excited about.
Good. It is great to have you on. My most memorable breakdown with you was, of course, Takahiro Tomiyasu, who, of course, came from Bologna,
Yeah,
and that was a fantastic, I think, to date, the most viewed video on Latte Firm on the channel feed. So
really.
it is
Wow.
great to have you in my company again. Thank you so much for everybody waiting so patiently in the chat. We are going live, Nima, across all platforms, so YouTube and Twitter. Welcome to everyone. Get involved in the chat. This, of course, is a breakdown. We're going to have slides galore. You can get a couple of questions, maybe, if we have time towards the end to Nima. That would be great. Nima, before we dive into the wonderful content that awaits, because I've made the slides and I'm really excited about this guy. And I must confess, as per normal, I know nothing about this player apart from that awesome slalom in run that he did for Italy
Mm,
in the Euros before he set up that late goal against Croatia. And I've
mm.
just gone on that hype train. But before we talk about Ricky, tell us about yourself. And you are co-host of the Italian Football Podcast, which of course people can find on YouTube.
Yes, it's at ITA Foot Pod. We have the same at on all platforms. We're available on all podcasts for platforms as well. And if you want to support the show, we're available on Patreon too. So, what I am is a football journalist. I've worked as an independent football journalist for 12 years, focused entirely on Italian football. I started by setting up a football website, a news site called sempreinter.com, which is dedicated to following Inter Milan 24/7. And then I've worked with the Football Italia. I did exclusives for Di Marzio, goal.com through the years. And now we're doing more of the audio video format of interviews, which on our pod. And yeah, we interviewed Paul Ince and Stuart Pearce going into the Euros with them. We do analysis. We do, we've had Di Matteo on. I mean, we try to do everything. We try to bring people who, in some way, are connected to Italian football or have been. I mean, we had Destiny Udogi on. We had Delofeo on. Stuff like that. So yeah, just check us out at Ita Footpod.
Oh, thank you for that. And it's safe to say that you know a little bit about Italian football. So welcome, my friend, amore mio, as I greeted you in the green room behind the chat. Everyone's so kind. People are really looking forward to
Thank
this
you.
one. People know exactly who you are. Here is Rofikov saying elite link up. Let's go. Right, let's bring up the slides. First question straight off the bat. This guy, why would Arsenal be interested in Riccardo Calafiori as I bring up the slides, Nima?
Well, I mean, this Arsenal, I mean, I think when I came on with Tomiyasu, this was, what was it, 3 years ago now? When was it? I mean, this was just the beginning of this new Arsenal under Arteta, the out with the old established players, let's start new with young players, and we want to bring in players that, work in his system and so on. And Riccardo Calafiori is exactly that. I mean, he's only 22. He's very exciting. He had a fantastic season, breakout season at Bologna, who had a brilliant season. I mean, you just look at the Euros and you see so many Bologna players doing so well. The best of the lot, if you ask me, was Joshua Zirkzee together with Calafiori, and of course he's not even been played at all by the Netherlands because, well, Ronald Koeman is an idiot, as we all know. But leaving that aside, he was probably the biggest breakthrough in Serie A last season. He was unbelievable. He's a very modern central defender. He used to be a left centre back, so fullback, so he can kind of play both roles. So it kind of makes sense for me that Arsenal are looking to buy him. Actually, doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, that is a great opening in terms of why we would want him, and my mouth is watering already. So, listen, what do we know about the boy? Well, I know that he is 22 years of age and only just turned 22 in May. Comes in at a towering 189 centimeters, so 6'3", currently playing at Bologna, as you've just said. Italian national, has played for the under 15, 16, 17s, 19s, and 21s, and now has 5 caps for Italy. And of course, I joked about that slaloming run at the start of the show. That was a fantastic performance in that game against Croatia. He's Preferred foot is left. He is now playing at centre back, left centre back. Did start off his career as a left back and sort of left wing back, if you like. We'll talk about that in a second. Some really impressive stats. You talked about him being the breakthrough at Bologna, who've had an amazing season. I think they qualified for the Champions League for the first time in 50 years. So 26 starts in Serie A last season, 4 off the bench, 63% of his duels won, 71% of his aerial duels won, and dribbled past only 0.3 times per game on average. A fairly clean player, 4 yellows, no reds, and he does have a long contract at Bologna, which expires 30th of June 27. You can see the images on the right there, Nima. Born and raised in Roma, a youth product there. Interestingly, 3 months after signing his first professional career, had a almost career-threatening knee injury. Took him a long time to recover from that and make some appearances for Roma before moving on. Did sign for Basel in August 22 and then stayed there, I think, for a year into a 3-year contract. Thiago Motta purchased him to sign for Bologna. Look, straight off the bat, when I read sort of stories about him, people tell me that he's powerful, he's aggressive, he's quick, but he's quite an attacking centre back, right? We've seen his progressive carries. There's compilations I'm sure everybody can see on YouTube. The way he just glides forward, he's a bit like, how Declan Rice just eats up the grass and gallops across the pitch. This guy likes to do that from the back. I mean, what is Arteta cooking here? Tell me about his playing style. So tell me about his defensive strengths, how you would rate him as a defender, what you think his strengths are, and tell us about how he would attack, because Arteta's game is about defensive stability, but it's also about breaking the lines and, dominating opposition.
Well, I mean, if we talk about his strength, I'd say his number one strength is his mental strength. I mean, he is from Petriana near the Vatican State in Rome, where as a kid, before he joined Roma at the age of 9, the director of football there, or the director of football of the school there, said that from an early age, you could see that he had a hunger that superseded everyone his own age, and he had a talent that was out of this world. And then, of course, at 17, he signed his first professional contract under the watchful eyes of Roma legend Bruno Conti, a famous or a very popular Roma site, Il Romanista, wrote at the time that he's the best fullback of his age in Italy, full stop. He had Mino Raiola as his agent. He was part of the Champions League semi-final team, or squad rather, that, that beat Barcelona. And everything was going really well until the October 2018, when in the UEFA Youth League game against Viktoria Pilsen, 82nd minute, Václav Svoboda, who now plays in third, fourth tier of Czech football, put in a horror tackle. And the doctor at the time, quickly went on and put his knee together. And they say, that had he not done that, then who knows what would have happened. And the actual doctor at the hospital said that it looked like, and I quote, it looked like his knee had exploded. It looked like an injury that usually only happens in motocross and happens every 10 years. But 11 months later, he was back on the pitch. And he said himself, Calafiori, that it's after this, that it was this experience, it was this step that made me understand that I could make it at the top, especially mentally, because I think of every setback I've gone through, I've always come back, and I've always come back stronger. And that's exactly it. I'd say, despite all the hype around him and everything that we've seen about him in terms of the football, which is fantastic, and I know we're going to go through that, I think his mental strength is unbelievably impressive. You just can't get on top of him. He never gives up. He just, every ball that he goes after is as if his life depends on it. He's a modern defender, but he's got very old school Italian tendencies or traits, such as he's very, very difficult to go around. He knows exactly where the law is and he doesn't cross it. And that's why he's only got 4 yellow cards, because he's very difficult. He's aggressive in his style, and he's made life very difficult for very many strikers coming up against him. So this is a very, very good. This is a very huge talent, and the development he had under Thiago Motta last season was just surreal.
We will talk about his time under Thiago Motta. I mean, you talk about characteristics of Italian defenders of old. I mean, he's got the flowing locks of a certain Paolo Maldini.
Oh God.
And also Nesta, which brings to
Yeah.
mind. But let's talk about that later. Look, I want to talk about some of his sort of stats, and this is a great radar that's been prepared by Canon Stats, as you can see. Do
Nice.
go and follow Canon Stats, and it compares him actually to Jakub Kivior, who of course could be on his way out, depending on
Yeah.
who people follow on socials. He looks like he could be going back to Italy. The numbers that impressed me most, or the sort of the percentile that impressed me most. I mean, obviously, look, interceptions, blocked passes, fantastic tackles, aerial duels. I mean, look at he's supreme at that. But look at his contribution on the ball in terms of progressive carries, dribbles completed, his passing efficiency, his contribution to XG build-up. I mean, this is a guy who's obviously very sound, very professional, very prim and proper and aggressive at the back, like you say, but he can do a lot with the ball. The type of player that Mikel Arteta is now known for going at centre-back.
Exactly that, and that's why it makes such perfect sense to bring him in, and also, of course, the fact that he can play as a left back as well as a full back and centrally as well, and also these breaking the lines kind of runs as well with the ball. I mean, you mentioned the Croatia game. He scored 2 goals against Juve. Doing one of those goals, if I remember correctly, was exactly that. He breaks. He when things when teams are defending against you in deep blocks, and you need to have someone from deep to break that line, carry the ball forward, and disrupt things, and pull players out of their position, the defending teams out of their position. He does that, and he does it time and time again. And I think the Croatia game was a fantastic example of that, and that's why Zaccagni was so alone, on that wing, and that's why he was able to equalize.
The eagle-eyed amongst you in the chat have noticed that, of course, these are stats of Jakub Kivior when he was at Spezia, obviously in Serie A, and he had limited game time at Arsenal. But if Jakub Kivior is to go, this is a guy who is not just going to be a squad player. If he comes, I must add that. Right. Okay. So if he's going to start, Nima, who does he displace? Because, under Thiago Motta, I know that Motta's played, I guess, a back 3, and Calafiori plays on the left side of that. Is that something Mikel might be trying with Gabriel and Saliba, or do you see Gabriel dropping out? I mean, it's quite mind-blowing that you say it with such conviction.
No, I do, because I think that, again, the quality, he is one of the most, him and Bastoni. I mean, the question for the last 3 years after Italy won the Euros in 21 was who replaces Bonucci, who joins Bastoni, and to replace Bonucci and Chiellini. Well, we now know who that is. We have 2 options. We have Calafiori, we have Bongiorno, we have Bastoni. So finally that there are defenders there after a historical low point in lack of quality Italian defenders after Bonucci and Chiellini. But the thing about Motta is he's played with a back 4 and a back 3. So he can play as a left fullback, and he can play as a left centre back, and play as one of the left centre backs in a back 4. And what I said. I mean, if you recall when we spoke about Tomiyasu, and I said he could play as a fullback, wing back, but also or a right centre back. Look, nowadays formation is so fluid. You have a starting formation, and then you have a fluid formation when you're with possession, without possession. And I think Arsenal are very fluid. Inter are definitely also very fluid. So I think that's just one of his traits, the strengths. I think the fact that he can play in so many different positions, or quote unquote positions, because it's, at the end of the day, it's starting positions, and then there's transitions with the ball, without the ball, all of those things, and he can handle them really, really well. And it just makes perfect sense to me that Arsenal are going after him, given how Arsenal play.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of people in the chat that are saying, look, Calafiori is going to be Arsenal's left back. So let's have a look at his heat map.
Could happen.
Some of his defensive actions. Minutes by position, courtesy of Sky Sports. Last season in Serie A, most of his game time left centre back, did have some game time at left back. His heat map, very concentrated towards that left-hand side, finds himself quite high up the pitch. If you look at his defensive actions on that right-hand side, Nima, the high concentration, as you can see, just inside his own half, but is winning the ball, is high in up. Duels quite high up. Tell us high about up. That.
Yeah, that's it, because of how Thiago Motta presses, like the team, how Bologna pressed high up the pitch, a cohesive press, and he was very instrumental in that. He led the line in that. So he's very good at that, and of course that's how Arsenal play as well. So it's another box ticked, really, tactically.
I can't wait. I mean, listen, if he was to come to Arsenal and play at left back, let's say Gabriel. I mean, obviously I go to the games and I worship Gabriel and Saliba as a partnership. What a pairing they are. I don't want to see them broken up. Do you think it's a shame almost to use Calafiori as a left back? Do you think he would come in and command that left centre back position?
I think he could do both. I look. I think to use him strictly as a fullback, maybe not, but he can do it, and he has done it. I don't think he's got any. He's quick. He's good with the ball. You know, he's a good, decent crosser. Maybe not his most famous attribute, but he's a good passer of the ball. He's very aggressive. You know, he's technically sound, solid. So maybe, you know, I don't think you're going to break up that partnership, but you also have to remember there's so many games next season. Like, I mean, just I'm looking at Inter. Inter have got 5 competitions next year, so you're going to have, and also I think with Arsenal, if you look at these 3 seasons since I first was on your show, you see the step-by-step improvement under Arteta. I think next season is when they're really wanting to win that Premier League trophy. I think they're aiming for north of 90 points, and that should be enough to win it, really. And because I mean, they just keep increasing, and I think what Calafiori does is offers insane depth. So, and also different solutions in different games when it's locked. Again, he is a player who can break the line with the ball at his feet and pull players out of position. And when you're locked in a draw away against some team that's really, you know, whoever you want to, you know, who's playing low blocks and trying to suffocate you and congest you, you need someone who can beat his man and come with pace and speed down the middle or down the left and rip the defense apart. And he's that kind of a player.
The squad depth really appeals to me, Nima. You know, we've been very lucky. Gabriel and Saliba had a really good injury-free season largely last year. We know what happened the season before when Saliba missed the tail end of the season. I think Arteta just wants to have his insurance. You know, we're all crying out for attacking players, and here he is in the market again for a defender. But listen, when you've got Tomiyasu, when you've got Ben White, Gabriel, Saliba, potentially this guy, he is making Arsenal very, very difficult to beat. And the whole squad depth thing, you know, we all, you know, sort of, we were annoyed with what Manchester City are doing financially, but then you look at, you know, Josko Guardiol, who comes on, £100 million defender, plays left back in place of Nathan Ake, who of course was the centre back as well. Maybe this is the direction of travel for football. You talk about him pressing high under Thiago Motta, and you talk about his passing ability. Let's move on to that, the influence on Bologna that he's had. But before we do that, open play passes. He's actually nabbed quite a few assists, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But look at where his starting position of passes are from. This courtesy of Opta Analyst, the little blue dots that you might be able to see on your screens, ladies and gents, boys and girls. I think this is record numbers. We've got thousands of people watching right now. Please do like the video, subscribe, and all that sort of jazz. It would be greatly appreciated. But he starts passing really high up. I mean, again, it's like he's like a tall, more athletic version of maybe Lisandro Martinez, the player that Arteta wanted to sign, maybe for exactly that reason. I forgot to mention Jurien Timber. I mean, blimey. Tell me about his passing style. What's he like distributing the ball?
He's a safe passer. He very rarely misplaces it, and he's an intelligent passer of the ball. In fact, I think you can actually make an argument that he could probably play in a holding role in midfield. Like if you wanted to school him, you know, change him into a different role. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but or that it should happen. But I'm just saying that I think he can actually hold his own as a deep lying playmaker in midfield. If I'm perfectly honest with you, so. That's why for me, as in terms of his passing and his creativity and vision, I think he's very. Those are some of the strongest attributes, if you ask me.
It's a shame that I don't have his pass completion map, because there are some delightful pings from left centre back position all the way over to that right hand side, and a certain Bukayo Saka I think would feast on those.
Well, that's the thing. That's one thing that Antonio Conte did a lot. I mean, the man is crazy, but he's also a tactical genius. One thing we saw with him when he was at Juve and then at Inter, this Bastoni diagonal cross ball to Barella running in from deep, or from the left centre back diagonally over to the right midfielder or one of the strikers or the other wing back. That's something that you're seeing more and more because it's so damn difficult to defend against. These lateral movements diagonally are difficult to defend against. That's something that we're seeing more and more coaches are using it. But Antonio Conte obviously was one of the first to come up with that, and we saw that time and time again with Inter using Bastoni like that. So yeah, I think that's something that you're going to see. And look, Saka, one of the best right wingers, one of the best wingers in the world, and quick, technical, and you got this guy. I mean, you know, he is. I know you guys wanted a striker, but you're not buying. And I know his position is defender, but he's not he is an attacking minded player.
My mouth is watering even more, Nima. This is great. Let's feel sorry for Bologna in case they are to lose him this summer. Of course, it's not confirmed yet. Patrick in the chat wondering, look, we're just doing this breakdown because the links are more than simmering, I would say. The impact he's had on that club. You talked about him being the breakthrough player. They've had a fantastic season, as we mentioned at the start of the show. Those are the stats without him. Obviously, a much higher win rate with him. If he were to leave, I mean, it'd be a bitter blow for Bologna, wouldn't it? I mean, are they expecting him to leave? There are sharks circling, it feels like.
No, look, Bologna had a fantastic season last year, but they've already lost their coach, Thiago Motta, to Juventus. Riccardo Calafiori, in my opinion, is, for all intents and purposes, has left. Joshua Zirkzee is being linked to Manchester United. So, and of course, they've replaced Thiago Motta with Vincenzo Italiano, who I don't particularly rate a lot. I think he's very. I think what Italiano's very good at is to develop young players and plays an attacking-minded football. But he's to say that he's naive in how he builds up and how he defends and how he somehow manages to make strikers always underperform, except for Dusan Vlahovic, is a problem. And I expect Bologna to struggle. I really expect them to have lots of difficulties. And then, of course, he plays a man-man defense like they did back in the 50s almost. It's a very, very weird style of football that he plays. Yes, it is a bitter blow to Bologna, but they're not going to be able. They can't turn down that kind of money. They just can't. And hopefully they reinvest it properly. I mean, again, Bologna has been one of the best well-run clubs. Sartori, who used to be at Atalanta and now he's at Bologna, is one of their directors there who's built this team up, and they're owned by the Saputo family, who are from Italian Canadians or Canadian Italians, big company. They're building a new stadium. So I think it depends on how they use this money, but their place in the food chain is clear. They overperformed massively, punched well above their weight last year. And this is what happens when you do that. The big dragons or the sharks come circling.
We do indeed. Listen, this game is about fine margins. We just talked about his cross-passing ability, and he is notched up the most assists by any centre-back in European football. I mean, again, is this another example of another sort of trick or tactic or edge that Mikel wants to bring? I mean, he's...
Yes,
tell me about it.
So. I absolutely think so. I think nowadays, I mean, what we saw from Inter's, what we learned, or what I learned footballing wise from when Inter reached the Champions League final, was, and watching that game and how Guardiola spoke about that game, about how he couldn't press too high up because Andre Onana was so good with the ball at his feet that if you did, he'd just play the ball past you. What the point I bring that up is because nowadays, that's how football is. Every single player on the pitch has to be able to pass, has to be able to help in attack. It's not, you don't have just players who defend or just attack. You have to be able to do both, especially the traditional defensive players. And Calafiori, I think it's exactly that. I think Arteta's looking at this and going, he will fit in like perfectly in my system, and he will offer us depth as well. We're playing 50, 60 games. We want to win the Premier League. We've been waiting for that for a long time. We need to reach north of 90 points. Okay, where did we lose the Premier League title last season? Well, it was away games where we dropped against lower teams when they managed to suffocate us. Well, here's a player who breaks that.
David Ornstein, I know you're watching. We need that bomber. We need that bomber tonight. Nima, before I get your thoughts on whether you think it's going to happen or not, there was a couple of questions in the chat that sort of caught my attention. Doesn't he look good in red and white? Look at those flocks. First of all, does he speak English? Do you know much
I've
about
seen,
how he'd
yeah,
sort of settle in?
I've seen him speak English actually, if I'm not mistaken. I think I've seen an interview with him in English, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Good to know. And if I were to say to you, and perhaps this is nitpicking because he's had such a marvelous year, what areas of his game do you think he needs to still work on? Where do you think he might be found out?
Yeah, I do think he's a little bit still like all young players. He's a little bit naive tactically at times, you know. But I think that's something that he will want to improve and do better at. You know, he is very eager to learn, and he wants to improve, and he's a very easy person to work with. Everyone, you know, everyone who's ever had to deal with him says that he's one of the most easily coached players ever, because he's such a desire and hunger to improve and win. And so, you know, and it takes a lot of mental strength. I mean, think about it. He was just, you know, in 2018 he has that horrible injury. 2019 December he comes back. Some 4 or 5 years later, here we are. He's only 22. He's going abroad, to trying a new experience, you know. He did have an agreement with Juve. He could have decided not to leave and demanded that they sell him to Juve, but instead he actually really relished at the idea of going to the Premier League, trying his luck in the Premier League, in what is the most competitive and probably qualitatively the best league in terms of players and coaches out there in the world right now. And you want to do that as a professional, you know, as a professional athlete. You want to try yourself against the best that are available. And I think, you know, the fact that he's, after just one season with Bologna, you know, showing that this is what he wants to do. He wants to go to the Premier League. That shows bravery, that shows maturity and hunger. But of course, like all players, the more experience they get, the better they become. And I expect the same thing from Calafiori. I think Arteta will, you know, they'll work on the details of his game that needs to be improved. What I love about him is his aggression in the defensive phase, without giving away free kicks and yellow cards. That's my favorite trait of his, if I'm going to be honest with you. But I think, yeah, I'd say tactical naivety sometimes, and positioning can sometimes be a little bit too eager.
Who better to coach him than Mikel Arteta, eh? I love what I'm hearing, Nima. So I guess the question is, you've talked about the potential move to Juventus that's fallen through. There are clubs like Chelsea looking into this guy. I mean, who aren't Chelsea wanting to buy? Do you think that Riccardo Calafiori might get his move to Arsenal this summer?
I think Arsenal are the favourites, and I think Arsenal is. I think he'll end up signing with Arsenal. I'm not going to be on the fence here. I think he'll end up signing for Arsenal. I think we're very, very close, and I think the fact that you see the Champions League, Arsenal being a team that's been in title races 2 years in a row, that kind of stability is important. And he's not blind. He watches the football Arsenal plays. It suits him. He likes it. So I think Arsenal. I don't really. I know Chelsea have been in the race. I know that for a fact. But I think when Arsenal, I think there's a preference towards Arsenal. Yes, and I think he'll go there.
Ooh, I am excited. I don't usually make those sorts of sounds during the day, but here we are. Nima, what can I say? The viewer count is just over 3,000 people watching live across both platforms now. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and get involved in the chat, of course. Everyone's asking, Nima, announce that you support Arsenal in England.
No, okay. So, no, listen. I've been asked this. I don't support anyone in England. It's honest. It's the God's honest truth. I don't have a favorite English team in any. I've never had it. I'm from Gothenburg in Sweden, right? And here, most people grown up, if you're from, you know, my age group, the 80s, Liverpool were a dynasty, right? So I watched, you know, I've got lots of friends who are Liverpool fans. I've got lots of friends who are Arsenal fans. But I've never really, I don't support any team in England. There are stories. I fall in love with stories in football. If you know, I mean, I support Inter and IFK Gothenburg and Iran and Italy. Those are my teams. But other than that, I fall in love with stories in football. And I think this project with Arteta is, you know, since I first met you, you know, and I found it really exciting. Is in very. I like the project. I like the way that Arsenal decided to return back to former glory, not by breaking financial laws or rules or regulations or buying big name players and splashing the cash and turning everything into some sort of real life FIFA, but actually scouting, building up a network, building a system, having a coach, believing in that coach, believing in the football he wants to play, carefully scouting young players that suit that system, bringing them in, making some really difficult decisions. I remember the Lacazette and everything that was going on there, and what's his name, Aubameyang, and all that, all the mess that was going on there. And he rode through all of that, and he built a united group, and he's brought in a group of young players who all enjoy playing in the same team, enjoying their football, get along off the pitch. I like the project that Arsenal have done. I really do, and I think it's, and also the emergence of Saka, for example, who's, I think everyone loves Bukayo Saka, like regardless of who you support. He's just he just seems like the loveliest human being ever, like his story and everything all about that. So no, I do, but and also I'm not a big fan of the alleged financial doping. I legally am obliged to say that Manchester City have done. I think it's quite disgusting, and I think that I think it's ridiculous that they have not been punished for it. The way I view it, I see Arsenal as I see Arsenal are the champions of England, in my opinion, for the last 2 years, because Man City had no business with those titles. They shouldn't have them.
Well,
that's how I feel it. So for me, Arsenal have already won the Premier League twice, 2 years in a row. They're going for the hat trick now.
well, that is going to be something that we will wait to see unfold. But what is not in doubt, and what has unfolded in the past, is your knowledge of Italian football. Takahiro Tomiyasu came in, and when he's fit, he's unbelievable. We also did the breakdown on Alexander Isak and Dusan Vlahovic. The Isak one, Newcastle fans. You've got a lot of friends in Newcastle, Nima, let me tell you. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate your knowledge. Really appreciate your insight on the player. Fascinating. The mental strength, his aggressive playing style, but very clean. The way he loves to progress the ball. He's aggressive. He plays in the high press. I mean, this guy is absolutely fit for Arsenal. If anybody wants to follow Nima, he is available at Nima Tavrud on Twitter. Also co-hosted the Italian Football Podcast, which is on YouTube as well. Nima, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you. For those of you who are watching, and there are thousands of you watching now live, please do drop a like before you go. We'll be back from next weekend with a weekly late night latte on the Sunday as per normal, and pre-season is just around the corner. Until next time, bye for now.